The shattered dream Natalyia Reed stood in the wreckage of what had once been her sanctuary. The art studio that Damen Cross had set up for her in his penthouse was now a battlefield. The broken canvases and scattered paint tubes, the man she had loved for 2 years towered over her, his dark eyes blazing with a kind of cold fury that had become far too familiar. "This is what happens when you question me, Natalyia." Damen's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "This is what your jealousy and paranoia create." The destroyed painting at her feet had been her latest work, a vibrant piece about hope and new beginnings. Now it lay in tatters, victim to one of Damian's increasingly frequent outbursts. She had made the mistake of asking why he had been working late every night for the past month, why their dinner dates kept getting cancelled, why she felt more like a decoration in his life than a partner. "I wasn't being paranoid," Natalyia said quietly, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I was trying to understand why the man I love seems to hate spending time with me." Damian's laugh was bitter and sharp. "Love? You think this is about love? This is about possession. Natalyia, you belong to me. I made you from nothing. That little coffee shop artist working for tips is gone because I chose to elevate you." That words hit like physical blows. For 2 years, Damian had systematically chipped away at her confidence, making her believe that her worth came from his approval, that her art only mattered because he validated it. The galleries showing he had arranged, the connections he had made for her, the beautiful life he had provided, it all came with invisible chains. "I never asked you to make me into someone else," Natalyia replied, her voice growing stronger. "I asked you to love who I already was. Who you were wasn't enough. You were a nobody, Natalyia, failed artist with big dreams and no talent. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me, with accusations and demands." Natalyia looked around the destroyed studio at the years of work now ruined, at the man she had thought she knew. This wasn't love. This had never been love. This was ownership, control, a game where she could never win because the rules kept changing. The breaking point. "You're right," she said finally, the words tasting strange in her mouth. "I should think about whether this relationship is right for me." Damen's expression shifted, surprise flickering across his features. In all their fights, Natalyia had always been the one to apologize, to back down, to find ways to make peace. She had never been the one to suggest walking away. "You're threatening to leave me." His voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm recognizing that I'm not happy, and neither are you. We bring out the worst in each other. You have no idea what your life will be like without me. You'll go back to that pathetic little apartment, struggling to sell paintings to tourists. You'll age out of relevance with nothing to show for your time with me." Natalyia felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of bonds she hadn't realized were there. "Maybe I will struggle. Maybe I'll fail. But I'll do it as myself, not as some version of me that you've created. Yourself isn't enough, Natalyia. It never was. Then find someone who is enough for you as they are, because I'm done trying to be someone else." She gathered her purse and the few personal items that hadn't been destroyed in his rage. The elevator doors closed on his shocked face and his final cruel words. "You're nothing without me, Natalyia. Remember that when you're alone." The discovery 3 weeks later, Natalyia stared at the positive pregnancy test in her small apartment bathroom, her hands shaking as the implications crashed over her. She was carrying Damen Cross's child. After 2 years of being careful of never wanting to complicate their already turbulent relationship with the question of children, fate had made the decision for her. Her first instinct was to call him, despite everything that had happened, despite the cruel way their relationship had ended. This was his child, too. He deserved to know. But then she remembered his words, his rage, the way he had destroyed her. Art without a second thought. What would Damian do if he knew about the pregnancy? Natalyia had no illusions about his character. He was a man who viewed people as extensions of himself, possessions to be controlled and managed. If she told him about the baby, he would use it as leverage to force her back into his life on his terms. And if she refused, if she tried to maintain boundaries, Damen Cross was worth billions of dollars. He had teams of lawyers, unlimited resources, and a pathological need to win at every cost. He could destroy her in court, take her child away, make her life miserable until she submitted to his will. "I can't tell him," she whispered to her empty apartment. "I have to protect this baby." The decision felt both terrifying and clear. She would disappear, start over somewhere far from Damian's influence, raise her child in peace and safety. The Great Escape. Her best friend Rachel had moved to Portland 2 years earlier for graduate school. When Natalyia called her crying and desperate, Rachel didn't hesitate. "Come here," Rachel said immediately. "Stay with me until you figure things out. Portland is perfect for artists, and it's far enough from San Francisco that you can start fresh." Within 2 weeks, Natalyia Reed ceased to exist in San Francisco. She broke her lease, closed her bank accounts, changed her phone number, and drove north with everything she owned, packed into her old Honda Civic. It was the most terrifying and liberating thing she had ever done. Portland welcomed her with rain and possibilities. She found a small apartment in a neighborhood full of families and community gardens. She built a new freelance business working with local nonprofits and small businesses. She volunteered at the library and made friends with other young mothers at prenatal classes. For the first time in years, Natalyia felt like herself. Not someone's creation or possession, but a complete person with her own dreams and choices. The pregnancy was difficult sometimes, the morning sickness brutal and the loneliness acute, but she was free. New life, new hope. 9 months later, Portland General Hospital became the site of the most beautiful moment of Natalyia's life. The labor was long and difficult, but Rachel held her hand through every contraction, offering encouragement and strength. "I can see the head," Dr. Martinez announced from the foot of the bed. "One more push, Natalyia." The next few minutes were a blur of effort and anticipation, and then suddenly there was crying loud and indignant and perfect. "It's a girl," Dr. Martinez said, holding up a tiny, angry baby covered in blood and possibility. Natalyia burst into tears at the sound of her daughter's voice. Overwhelmed by love so immediate and fierce, it took her breath away. This was her baby, her daughter, the most beautiful thing she had ever created. "Emma," she whispered through her tears. "Her name is Emma." But Dr. Martinez was smiling. "There's another one coming." Natalyia's surprise. 15 minutes later, Lucas joined his sister in the world. Quiet where Emma was vocal, thoughtful where she was demanding. Twins. She was the mother of twins. 2 perfect children. Who would know? Only her love and protection. Looking at her babies for the first time, Natalyia made a silent promise. "I'm going to give you everything I never had. Love without conditions, support without strings attached, and the freedom to be exactly who you are." Both babies had dark hair and strong features that marked them clearly as their father's children, but they were hers, created from love that had turned toxic, but innocent of their father's flaws. They would grow up surrounded by community, creativity, and unconditional acceptance. As Emma opened her gray eyes and seemed to look directly at her mother, Natalyia felt complete. The decision to leave, to hide, to protect these precious lives had been the right one. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as a family built on love, rather than control. The man who had once told her she was nothing had no idea that his children were being raised by a woman who had found everything within herself. The hospital encountered 2 years had passed like a gentle dream. Natalyia pushed the double stroller through the corridors of Dornbecker Children's Hospital, her heart heavy with worry about Emma's persistent fever that had brought them here for tests. At 2 years old, the twins were walking, talking, and displaying personalities that filled her world with joy and purpose. Emma was the fearless leader, quick to laugh, but equally quick to defend her quieter brother. Lucas was gentle and thoughtful, with an intuitive kindness that made everyone around him smile. Both children were healthy, happy, and blissfully unaware that their comfortable world was about to shift forever. "Mama, why are we here?" "My ass," her vocabulary impressive for her age, as she clutched her favorite stuffed elephant. "Just to make sure your fever goes away completely, sweetheart. The doctors want to check that you're all better." "I feel good now," Emma declared with typical stubborn independence. "I know you do, but we want to keep you healthy." Lucas, who had been quietly observing the busy hospital around them, suddenly tugged on Natalyia's jacket. "Mama, that man is staring at us." Natalyia glanced up from adjusting Emma's blanket and felt her blood turn to ice. Across the hospital lobby, standing near the information desk in an expensive charcoal suit that looked completely out of place in the pediatric ward, was Damen Cross. He was staring directly at them with an expression of shocked recognition, his dark eyes moving from her face to the children in the stroller. Time seemed to freeze. Natalyia was caught between the past she had fled and the present she had built, while her innocent children looked curiously between her and the stranger who was walking toward them with determined purpose. The confrontation, Italy. His voice was exactly the same, deep and controlled, carrying the authority of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. But there was something else in it now, something that sounded almost like wonder. "Damian." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. He stopped a few feet away from the stroller, close enough to see the children clearly, but far enough to avoid frightening them. Emma and Lucas stared up at him with typical toddler curiosity, unafraid but cautious. He couldn't seem to finish the sentence, his usual commanding presence shaken by the reality before him. "Is there my children? Our children?" It wasn't a question. His business mind was already calculating dates and timelines, putting together the pieces she had hoped he would never find. "My children," Natalyia corrected firmly, her protective instincts flaring to life. "How old are they?" 2 years old. Damon's jaw tightened as he processed the timeline. "You were pregnant when you left me. I found out 3 weeks after we broke up, and you never told me." His voice was flat, but you could see the storm building behind his carefully controlled exterior. "No, I protected my children from a situation that would have harmed them. You hid my children from me for 2 years. The accusation hung heavy in the air between them. I gave my children a peaceful, loving childhood instead of exposing them to toxicity." Damian looked down at Emma and Lucas again, taking in their dark hair, their strong features, the unmistakable resemblance that marked them as his. His expression softened as he truly saw them for the first time, not as possessions or symbols of his legacy, but as small, vulnerable human beings. "What are their names?" he asked quietly. Natalyia hesitated, then decided honesty was her only option, now that her secret was exposed. "Emma and Lucas. Emma and Lucas Cross. Emma and Lucas Reed. They have my last name." Something flickered across Damian's face. Pain, perhaps, or recognition of how completely she had removed him from their lives. The children's questions. Emma, who had been listening to this adult conversation with the intense focus that characterized her personality, suddenly spoke up. "Mama, who is this man?" Natalyia looked down at her daughter, then at Lucas, who was watching the adults with worried eyes. These children had never needed her protection more than they did right now. "This is someone Mama used to know, sweetheart." "I'm your father," Damian said gently, kneeling to their eye level. "I'm your daddy." Natalya's heart stopped. "Damn, don't. They have a right to know who I am. They have a right to be protected from someone who might hurt them." "I would never hurt them. You said you would never hurt me either." The words carried the weight of 2 years of emotional manipulation and control. Damian's expression tightened, but he didn't deny the truth of her statement. Emma, with the directness that only children possess, asked, "Where have you been, Daddy?" The question hit Damen like a physical blow. "I've been working far away, but I want to get to know you now." "I do. You live with us?" Lucas asked hopefully. "No, buddy. I live in a different city. Can we go play now?" Emma asked, already losing interest in the complicated adult emotions surrounding her. "The aftermath. We need to talk," Damian said quietly to Natalyia. "Not here, not with them, but we need to talk. There's nothing to discuss. I have children, Natalyia. Children I've never met, never held, never been allowed to know. There's everything to discuss. I won't let you control their lives the way you tried to control mine. I want to see them. I want to be part of their lives. It's not going to happen." Damian's voice took on a familiar edge. "You can't keep me away from my children forever. Watch me." Natalyia turned the stroller toward the elevator, her heart pounding with adrenaline and protective fury, but his next words stopped her cold. "I won't fight you in court, Natalyia. Not yet. But this isn't over." She looked back at him, seeing something in his expression she had never seen before. Emotion raw and unguarded, vulnerability that seemed completely foreign to the controlled man she had once known. "I have children," he said softly, as if he was still trying to process the reality. "I have a son and a daughter." "No," Natalyia replied firmly. "I have a son and a daughter. You have nothing." As the elevator doors closed, separating her from the man who had once dominated her life, Natalyia felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. For 2 years, she had built a safe, happy life for her children in Portland. Now, Damen knew they existed, and everything was about to change. The only question was whether the man she had seen in that hospital lobby, showing what appeared to be genuine emotion for the first time since she had known him, was capable of becoming someone different. Someone who could be trusted around the precious lives she had spent 2 years protecting. That night, she held Emma and Lucas a little tighter during their bedtime story, knowing that their simple, peaceful world had just become infinitely more complicated. The transformation that night. Damen Cross stood in his Portland hotel suite, staring out at the city lights through Florida ceiling windows, seeing nothing but two small faces that looked exactly like his childhood photographs. His hands shook as he poured himself a scotch, his third since leaving the hospital, trying to process the revelation that had turned his entire world upside down. He had children, two beautiful, healthy children, who had been walking, talking, and living there, lived for 2 years without him ever knowing they existed. The business empire that had once consumed every waking moment suddenly felt meaningless compared to the reality that he was a father. Damian had come to Portland for a routine acquisition, planning to spend 3 days handling negotiations before returning to San Francisco. Instead, he discovered that the woman who had walked out of his life nearly 3 years ago had been raising his children in secret. The anger came first, hot and familiar, but as it faded, other emotions began to surface. Emotions he wasn't accustomed to feeling, let alone acknowledging: regret, loss, a hollow ache in his chest that had nothing to do with wounded pride, and everything to do with missing 2 years of his children's lives. He thought about Emma's direct questions and Lucas's quiet watchfulness. They didn't know him. His own children looked at him like a stranger, because that's exactly what he was to them. What kind of man inspires that level of fear in the mother of his children? He asked the empty room. For the first time in his adult life, Damian was forced to confront the uncomfortable truth about himself. It was successful, powerful, and completely alone. And now he understood why Natalyia had chosen to disappear rather than tell him about their children. She had been protecting them from him. The search for help. 3 days later, Damen sat in the comfortable office of Dr. Patricia Williams, one of Portland's most respected therapists, specializing in narcissistic personality disorders and emotional abuse patterns. He had never been to therapy, had always viewed it as weakness, an admission of failure. Now, facing the possibility of never knowing his children, he was willing to confront whatever demons had made him till someone, a woman, felt she needed to protect her babies from. "What brings you here today, Mr. Cross?" Dr. Williams asked her, manner professional but kind. "I think I might have serious problems with how I treat people I'm supposed to love," Damian said, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. "I think I emotionally abused someone, and now, I've lost access to my children because of it." Dr. Williams studied him carefully. "What makes you think you were emotionally abusive?" Damen told her everything about his relationship with Natalyia, the patterns of control and manipulation, the way he had made her feel worthless for asking simple questions. He told her about the twins, about Natalya's choice to hide them, about his growing realization that her fear had been completely justified. "I spent 3 years telling myself she was unstable, dramatic, that she left because she couldn't handle being with someone successful, but seeing her yesterday, seeing how terrified she was to let me near our children, I know I was the problem." "What do you hope to accomplish through therapy?" "I want to change, and I want to become someone who deserves to know his children. I want to understand why I behaved the way I did, and make sure I never hurt anyone like that again." The sessions that followed were brutal. Dr. Williams guided Damian through the painful process of examining his childhood learned behaviors, the ways he had unconsciously replicated his own father's emotional unavailability and need for control. "Narcissistic behavior often develops as a survival mechanism," she explained during their 4th session. "When a child learns that love must be earned through perfection, they develop a false self designed to meet those impossible standards. The real self gets buried so deep that the person forgets it exists." Damian was beginning to understand the pattern. Every time Natalyia had challenged him or failed to provide the constant admiration he craved, he felt threatened at a core level. His angry responses hadn't been about her behavior, but about his own desperate need to maintain the illusion of perfection that had become his identity. "I made her responsible for my self-worth," he realized during their 5th session. "When she didn't act like I was perfect, I punished her for it." The cautious approach. 2 weeks after the hospital encounter, Natalyia was loading groceries into her car when she noticed the familiar figure standing across the parking lot. Damian had been appearing at random moments over the past month, never approaching, never threatening, just observing from a distance, as if trying to learn about their lives. It should have felt like stalking, but something about his presence was different. He kept his distance, never tried to interact with the children, never attempted to force conversations. He just watched, as if he was trying to understand the world she had built for Emma and Lucas. Today, instead of pretending she didn't see him, Natalyia made a decision. She settled the twins in their car seats, then walked across the parking lot to where Damian stood beside his rental car. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "I'd like that very much. Not here. Out with the kids around. There's a coffee shop on Southeast Division tomorrow at 7. I'll be there. And Damian, stop following us. It's making me uncomfortable." He looked genuinely horrified. "I never wanted to make you uncomfortable. I just wanted to see them, to learn about their lives. I'm sorry. I didn't think about how it would look." The apology surprised her. The old Damian never apologized, ever acknowledged that his perspective might be flawed. The coffee shop conversation. Damian arrived 15 minutes early and chose a corner table where they could speak privately. When Natalyia walked in exactly at 7, he was struck by how different she looked from the woman he had once known. There was strength in her posture, confidence in her movements that hadn't been there during their relationship. Motherhood had transformed her in ways that had nothing to do with physical appearance and everything to do with purpose. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as she sat down. "I'm not here to be friendly, Damian. I'm here because you're not going away, and I need to understand what you want. I want to know my children." "Why? You never wanted children before. You said they would interfere with your career." "I was wrong about many things." Natalyia studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculated charm. Instead, she saw something that looked almost like vulnerability. "What's changed?" I'm in therapy, Natalyia. It's 3 times a week with a specialist who's helping me understand why I treated you the way I did." Therapy. It was a foreign concept. I know how it sounds, coming from me, the man who thought emotions were weakness and vulnerability was failure. But I can't keep living as the person I was. It's because you want access to your children. Because I can't stand being the kind of person who would hurt his children the way I hurt their mother. The distinction was subtle but important, and Natalyia heard it. "What has therapy taught you?" Damian was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "That I was emotionally abusive. I used manipulation and control to manage my own insecurities. That I made you responsible for my self-worth and punished you when you couldn't fulfill that impossible role in 3 years." She had never heard him acknowledge any responsibility for their relationship's toxicity. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know that I understand why you left. I understand why you hid our children from me. And I want you to know that I'm trying to become someone who deserves to know them." "Deserves?" Her voice was sharp. "You think doing therapy means you deserve access to my children?" "No, I think it means I'm starting the process of earning that access, if it's possible." Natalyia stared at him, searching for signs of the calculated charm that had once drawn her in. But Damian's usual polished confidence was gone, replaced by something she had never seen in him before. Genuine humility. "What exactly are you asking for?" "A chance to prove I've changed. Supervised visits, maybe an opportunity to show Emma and Lucas that I'm safe. And if I say no, then I respect that decision and continue working on myself, hoping that someday you might reconsider. You won't fight me in court." "No. Forcing my way into their lives would just be another form of the control that drove you away." The first steps due weeks later. Natalyia called him. "The answer is yes," she said, her voice steady but nervous. "But there are strict conditions." "Name them." "Supervised visits only. 1 hour, once a week, in a public place of my choosing." "Oh, you don't get to be alone with them until I'm convinced you're safe. You don't get to make any parenting decisions. If you're late, if you cancel, if you do anything that makes me uncomfortable, the visits stop immediately." "I understand and agree to all of those terms." Saturday at 2, Laurelhurst Park, by the playground, 1 hour. The reunion Saturday afternoon found Damian sitting on a park bench 20 minutes early, watching other families play and trying to calm his nerves. When he saw them approaching, Mia pushing the double stroller with Emma and Lucas chattering excitedly about the playground equipment ahead, his heart nearly stopped. They looked even more beautiful than he remembered. Emma wore a bright yellow coat that made her dark hair shine, while Lucas was bundled in green with a toy truck clutched in one small hand. "Mama, is that the man from the hospital?" Emma asked as they got closer. "Yes, sweetheart. His name is Damian, and he wants to spend time with you today." "Why?" Lucas asked with typical toddler directness. "Because I'm your father," Damian said gently, kneeling to their eye level. "I'm your daddy, and I've been hoping to get to know you better." Emma studied him with those grey eyes so much like his own. "Where have you been?" The question hit harder than he had expected. "I've been working far away, but I'm here now." "You want to play with us?" Lucas asked hopefully. For the next hour, Damian was introduced to the wonderful, chaotic world of playing with toddlers. Emma was fearless and demanding, requiring constant attention and praise. Lucas was more cautious but equally engaging, asking thoughtful questions and offering to share his truck. When Emma called out, "Daddy, look," for the first time, using the title as naturally as if she had been saying it her whole life, Damian nearly broke down crying right there on the playground. "Time to go," Natalyia announced as the hour ended. "Will you come back?" Lucas asked, slipping his small hand into Damian's. "Can we go to the zoo next time?" Emma asked excitedly. "We'll see," Natalyia said diplomatically as they walked back to the car. Damian felt something he had never experienced before. Unconditional love from two small people who saw only potential in him, not his past mistakes. "Thank you," he said quietly to Natalyia as she buckled the children into their car seats. "Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. Prove to me that you've really changed." "I will," he promised. "I'll spend the rest of my life proving it if I have to." Driving away from the park, Damian realized that for the first time in his adult life, he had something worth changing for. Two small voices had called him daddy. He was determined to become worthy of that title. The man who had once believed emotions were weakness had just discovered that loving his children was the strongest thing he had ever done. And maybe if he continued to change, if he proved himself trustworthy, he might get the chance to be the father Emma and Lucas deserved. The journey would be long and difficult, but watching his children play had shown him what real success looked like. Not money or power, but the trust of two small hearts that still believed their daddy could be a hero.